There is no gift without a price, and the ones that come easiest are sometimes the hardest to pay. Losknek, Prince of Hell. Neroth has reclaimed his own. After a century of rule, the dark apostate of Canseri has relinquished his claim upon this mortal coil and passed into oblivion. Shadows cluster among the vaults of the capital city of Nishanpur as the Nihon of the Church of the Dark Triumvirate gather to intrigue for dominance over the unquiet soul of the land. Into this passion play of fiends and vipers enter the player in their quest to uncover lore not meant for the eyes of mortal men, and to make a choice between unspeakable evil. Blood Reign of Nishanpur. And there it is. There is that amazing cover. So tell us, Jarrad, who's joining me once again to discuss the beginning of the Arcanis story. He is the author of the previous Spear Logan, and now we are looking at the follow-up, the second part, the Blood Reign of Nishanpur. So, what do we got? What are we looking at here?
I think this is one of the demons of Sarish, I believe, in Nishanpur. I think so. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It's a lovely picture though. I really enjoy it. So is this another Brahm, I think?
Right there. This is another Brahm,
yeah.
94. Yep. Pretty amazing, huh? That was, do you happen to know how that happened? Were you able to get Brahm to do covers for you guys?
He did not make them specially for us. He had a catalog of things he had already done, and we were able to purchase them for use as our covers. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one of the things I have discovered in my research since our last conversation, both the research and a conversation from Henry, is that these are in fact original printings. There are no print-on-demand copies of either of these two books. That the files were lost, corrupted, whatever, but this is it. If you want to become an Arcaniac and start in the beginning, you have to find these adventures out in the wild.
So, are they available in PDF? Do you know?
No.
Like, have they been converted? No. Wow. Okay.
No. I want. Yeah. If you go to Drive-Through RPG, so that's what this is what happened. Is that Henry, after we looked at the last one, and I was commenting about how things looked and verifying, and it just what it is it just is a much lighter gradation than the other books have that I'm used to seeing. So this is the original printing. You can't get them on PDF at all. This is it. If you want one of these, this is how it's going to happen. So, what is this Game Master's background? I'm going to assume the Spear of Logan has been run. So the Spear of Logan dealt with an ancient pact between Jude Logan and a demon prince called Losknek. Yeah, we didn't really talk about that, the background, though. So, Losknek. Is this your idea? Did you create Losknek?
I think I came up with a name. It's a weird enough name that I probably invented it. I really, I honestly don't remember much about it. I don't remember how much was my contribution or somebody else kind of like hanging out. We did have meetings, so I think Lost Neck was mine. I don't know for certain.
Okay, because he like many things that sometimes in the beginning seem either throwaway or important now, but actually continue to be important throughout. And Lost Neck was one of those characters. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I did not know that.
There you go. So in exchange for his promise to deliver the Black Book of Yamandragor, the prince assisted Jude in opening a gate to the lands of Sarish and sent a powerful demon called a Quarate, as well as a number of lesser minions to serve Jude. Soon usurped his brother's lands and murdered his family. His brother returned, killed Jude, and pinned the Quarate with a holy spear as it emerged from the gate. Centuries passed, and eventually a band of heroes dared to enter the ruins of Logan Castle to retrieve fragments of the Holy Spirit, destroy the Quartet. Once this was accomplished, the gate remained open as a conduit from Onara to the realm of Sarish. Jude Logan had never fulfilled his part of the bargain to turn over the Black Book to the Losknek, so Losknek soon sent his agents out in search of the book. Losknek was ever able to find the Black Book because a sorceress named Sulamai Val Nihan stole it shortly before the Quartai was killed. Sulamai is a Nihang, a high priest of Kanseri, who was part of a conspiracy against a dark apostate at the time, a lich in the service of Nira. Sulamai used the spells from the book to strike a deal with the sorcerer king of Imandagor, who in turn sent one of his ordainers, a wizard able to eat magic and channel it into his own spells. The ordainer devoured the energies, keeping the dark apostate animate, and Sulamai and her allies moved to have a new dark apostate elected. As the balance of power shifts in Kanseri, Prince Losknek becomes frustrated by his servant's failure to locate the book and goes seeking the imp who brokered the deal between Jude and himself, Jude's familiar Pyedma. He appears at a feast held by Duke Victor Valholrin of Millendir, discovers Pyedma hiding among the guests, and learns from the imp that a wizard from Kanseri stole the book. He offers to seal the gate in Logan Castle if the heroes can retrieve the book for him. Doesn't ring a bell, huh?
Not a whole lot of it. Yeah, I think the weird names are definitely mine. Mandragore, I know, was a Henry thing. Like he really was. He had developed the Sorcerer King and Mandragore and the Ordainers and stuff. But all the odd like things that you're like, wow, I don't know if I can say that. It's probably because I thought it looked good in writing. But really it's just a mouthful. So yeah,
a lot of it is, and that's. I think that becomes the difference. What I've learned as I do more adventure writing and game designing, and in particular, for me, I'm a world builder. I just love it. I love going as in depth and detail. And names and naming conventions are one of those things where I always side on pronounceability and recognition. Over exotic.
Yeah.
If I want exotic, what I do is like I will randomly choose a language that I like the flow of and play off of that and look for names, from Sulawesi or wherever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do remember that I had a dictionary of religions, and I think Nihang actually is some sort of like religious title. It might be Iranian or from, Zoroastrianism or something. I'm not sure.
Well, oddly, you should mention I have an Oxford Encyclopedia of World Religion. Oh, here we go. Oxford
Woo.
Encyclopedia World Religion. This is one of my hidden I just rat bastard DM world building. I mean, oh my god, you go into here for world building and you just start riffing off of the stuff you find, and oh, it's awesome. All right, Nihangi, Nihang, militant.
Hey.
Oh wow, there we go. Punjabi without anxiety, militant core of Sikh Khalaf or the Khalsa.
Oh, so it was East Indian. Okay. All right.
Things arose in the time of Guru Gobind Singh, whose Dasma Granths they particularly revere. Nihangs are distinguished by their dark blue shirt and tall, tightly tied turban surrounded by a steel ring. As well as the 5 Ks, they carry steel weapons. For Nihang, iron steel symbolizes God's light. Cannabis is used to aid meditation. Nihangs belong to 4 dolls or armies, and whether married or celibate, observe a strict daily routine. Groups of Nihang preceded by the Adi Granth travel through Punjab on horseback, participating in religious events such as Hola Mahala.
Oh, there you go.
See this? Oh man, I mean, and that's what a great resource. That's when people go, oh, you wasted your time on your philosophy and anthropology, and, archaeology classes, and since you ended up being a chef. I used to think that of, well, there was a period where I was like, man, I should have just gone right to culinary school right out of the Navy. But, man, I learned a lot. I know a
It's
lot about the world.
it is important to be a well-rounded person, and I mean, and the least of it is that you can spin out interesting stories in a realistic fashion. Like I had a friend telling me like a kind of like the central conceit for a D&D like setting, and he was
Mhm.
describing the villains, and I'm like, oh, like the Khmer Rouge, right? And he was like, the who? And I'm like, oh, like Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge. And so like we got into a discussion about it, and I'm like, yeah, there was an actual group that, because the whole idea was like an evil group that comes in and forces people out of the cities, and I'm like, yeah, that happened,
Yeah.
in Cambodia, and he was like, oh, all right. So that gave us kind of like a baseline. We could like look
Yep.
at what happened in history to like, to sort of figure out like what the underpinnings belief wise were for these people, and like, what might happen next. So yeah,
All the
no,
time, man.
being well
All the
rounded
time.
is great.
And and if you are so my past, present, and future Arcaniacs, you have to. Oh, what is this considered postmodernism literary critique, where you start looking at the author and things like that. Isn't that what that is?
Sure. What you mean, like deconstruction, or like what do you mean, like
Well,
or John Barth?
this is my always been my example. So when I was a senior in high school, we read this story called The Gentleman from San Francisco, and I hated it. It was just like, this is so stupid. And the premise of the story is they tell you about this beautiful vacation spot, and then the cruise ship comes, and the gentleman from San Francisco and his family disembark and encounter the place, and everything looks like shit. And then they do this a couple times, and I'm like, what? What? Now I'm a senior in high school, and I'm like, ah, this is dumb. And then I looked at the author's name. He's Russian, and I
Yeah.
looked at when he wrote the story, and it was just after the Russian Revolution.
Mhm.
So, all of a sudden, and this was the purpose of reading the story. This is what when I pulled this out and showed my, the English teacher, he was, whoa. He was like, yes, this is what you need to understand sometimes, is that, this guy is writing a story in a literary manner, but what he's trying to do is show you that when capitalists show up, they destroy or ruin the native culture that they encounter, that
Mhm.
they look to monetize it immediately instead of enjoy it,
Yeah.
participate. So, so my point being is that, you have these influences that you don't realize. And Henry does too. Henry is a classical literature guy. He loves that sci-fi fantasy that came out of the 60s through the 70s, that's very much, heroic. And then but with that classical background, there are going to be tropes and themes and motifs that are just, they can't help but show themselves. Why you mandragore? There's
Mhm.
probably a reason.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so if you can sometimes tease those out, just understanding, oh, Nihang, wait, you know, and from there, yeah, you might have just used the term and riffed off of it, but even then, it has, oh, if you get into there's actually now a philosophy of words. What is this word Nihang mean? And even though you're using it randomly, does it not help but have some of its meaning? You know what I'm saying? And this
You're talking
is,
you're talking about semiotics, right?
well, it turns out there's even a step beyond semiotics.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. let's not get into that.
No,
Let's
no, no.
let's look.
But well, absolutely. And you know what? There might be some hidden things here. Nihang was East Indian. There's
Hmm.
later a scene which is reminiscent of Sete, which is like when the bride burning like during a funeral. So
Hmm.
I don't know what was going on in my head right then. I think I was reading a lot of stuff, East Indian
Well,
like stories.
yeah. So
Might have been
I'm
reading.
gonna read
I
more of
was
the words that you use. So what's the next
I was
model?
probably reading some Kipling like at the time.
Gurdwara,
So yeah, there you go. Yeah. So yeah,
right?
I don't remember what was going on right then, but yes, it's relevant. Sure.
Gurdwara, our communities in Kansari are typically very small and centered around a combination of church and town hall called a Gurdwara. The character of a particular community generally reflects the god of the Dark Triumvirate. So, did you design the Dark Triumvirate, or were you just thrown?
No, that was definitely a Henry thing.
Uh huh.
He had the idea. I think yeah, I think he was inspired by like kind of like pulp fantasy.
Hmm.
And there might have been I don't know what his source was.
Okay.
Maybe he was kind of basing it off some of these archetypes.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, I just kind of ran with it. And I definitely I think I we took it a little bit of a different direction. So
Well,
yeah,
cool.
from the source.
So the Order of the Spear, the setup. The players are invited to attend a feast held by Duke Victor Valholrin of Millendear to celebrate the first anniversary of the founding of the knightly Order of the Spear. So this is the last adventure,
Hmm.
a year in the future.
Hmm.
If the heroes are the same, yeah, blah blah blah. So that's the setup. And then we come back into these hard points and soft points. Uh, yeah, you got a couple soft points that allow people to wander around. Now that's not how the adventures, right? We discussed this. Adventures themselves now in Arcanis are an adventure, and
Hmm.
that the entire adventure itself is a hard point or a soft point,
Right.
right? That was, I think, a great idea because it really, it helps clarify for the players what they're coming into, and it helps. It gives you like a lot of freedom, I would say, as a designer, as a developer, a writer, to be able to just kind of riff.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, here we go. There's the man himself, or rather, demon.
Yeah. Nice picture.
This, yeah, yeah, it really is. So this is all you're sitting around having a feast, and then you know, Bosnick shows up and discovers there's this little demon hanging out and interrogates him. What is this? Oh, you get an opportunity to storm the gates of hell to kill all the little demons that are hanging out in the old Logan home. So, do you remember, or did you know how? Because we talked about this a little bit. How 3.5, third edition, right? We didn't really know how it worked,
Right.
and so here's, it looks like you just threw, like you probably didn't even do the stat block. This has got to be uh Pete,
I'm pretty sure that's Pete. Yeah. I think I might have given it a stab, like kind of like in general what I wanted,
right?
and then he definitely changed because I remember for example like a lot of my choices were thematic. The
Of course.
Warriors of Nair were like they were using hammers, which I completely stole from a game called Thief, because I really liked the group of like kind of oppressive warriors in that, which I believe they just use hammers because it was like the idea of like conformity.
Uh-huh.
And like Pete looked at it and was like, yeah, no, hammers don't do that much damage,
Right.
broadswords.
Exactly.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, but I wanted them to have
Slam birds,
hammers.
great swords. Yep.
Yeah. Which is okay. He's right. Like,
Hmm.
mechanically it works great. It just most of my choices were thematic, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm the same way often. I'm writing a bespoke adventure for someone right now, and I just made sure that everything was thematic when I started the build, and then I was watching this guy on YouTube who was ranking like all the feats in um, fifth edition. And, I'm just kind of paying attention. And then I went, oh, I see what you're doing here. I see what these feats do. I see how you can both go for the theme that I'm looking for, as well as being as efficient in my build as possible. And that's not my normal proclivity. That's what feats for.
Yeah. I have friends that really love that, and I can appreciate it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not my thing. Well, the
Okay.
interior art's a lot better than the first one, I think.
Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
well, and also I think the honestly, I think the print quality is just slightly better,
Yeah.
just slightly. Um,
I think Will
Worms that
Rivera
eat.
was still doing the art on this. I'm not sure if Jimmy had come in. I don't recall.
Art, graphic, artists.
Oh, Victor Choi. I remember Victor
Yeah,
Choi.
I remember Victor.
Wow.
Um,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
I
we're a
want to
bunch of
visit.
oh, there's Will Rivera. He's in Team Paradigm. But yeah, he
There we
was
go.
doing a
Yeah,
lot of the art direction at the time, and I think after he left, then Jimmy Beck took over.
yep,
But both of them did a great job, I think, you know.
yeah, yeah. What is this? Worms that eat the world. This is a soft point. You dream you are floating on the ocean, but the water is perfectly still about you. Then you slowly begin to sink beneath the surface. You wake up and realize the ground under your sleeping body is actually given way, and you are sinking into the dirt. Just before you open your mouth to scream, the ground closes over you. Unable to struggle free due to the weight of the earth around you, you are sucked deeper and deeper underground until you fall a short distance onto a stony cavern floor. Before you're able to gather your wits, you hear someone say, "Glow." Overhead, hundreds of tiny pinpricks of light begin to shed unsteady illumination on your surroundings. You are in a small cave, the room not high enough for you to stand upright, and the light comes from a mass of tiny glowing worms that sway to and fro in time from the sound of a distant drip, drip of waters. Not 15 paces from you, where you lay, is the corpse of a man who wears pieces of ruined, twisted metal and a deteriorated fur cloak. Half its face has been eaten away by worms. His other eye is good and stares at you. The corpse opens its mouth and you realize it is what it spoke earlier. Good. It is good. No matter how big you are, there is always something out to eat you. You have come here to eat what is eating me. The corpse chuckles and then begins to cough. It raises a fist to staunch a stream of mucus and thick black blood. And you notice that his fingers on his right hand were all broken when it lived and healed back misshapen. Being born, what a joke. It all leads to here, to the womb, to the gullet of the worm. Go on your way, but take this. Use it when you find our true pay. Tell, a, tell them Porful had a hand in their destruction. Use it to kill what's eating us. Porful holds out an arrow with a tattered purple feather. The head is marked with letters that burn red and squirm over the metal like tiny glowing maggots.
Hmm.
Wow. What do you think of that?
I uh I realize I still really like using dream sequences when I'm running a game. And I like
Yeah,
letting it's a way to deliver like really over the top exposition. And then
right.
plus the player knows that it's a dream sequence. So like they forget
Uh-huh.
about like how do I survive the situation or how do I game it? And they just
Right.
interact and role play instead. So,
Right.
you
Because
know,
at first it's like, oh man, you're railroading these people. You're not even giving them an opportunity to react. But
yeah, it's a dream. It's a dream. It's cool.
the
Now
dream
you can talk if
cares.
you want. I think I also
Uh,
really like the idea of bringing the villain from the last one back in and saying like, you
always.
know, this is a game about evil versus evil. So, you know, like sometimes you're going to seek the aid or you might be aided by, you know, things that are villains normally or people you wouldn't normally deal with, you know.
Yeah, I think the recurring villain is also, a more advanced game designer skill. It's not always done well. Like, normally it would be some sort of actual confrontation, whereas, this interaction is just creepy, sets this weird horror scene. Yeah, it's different, but it connects you to the world deeper because your memories are reinforced of what happened before with what's happening now.
Yeah, well, and it's always nice to have an antagonist that you have there's a personal dimension to it. At least, I mean, I think so. It doesn't work for every group. Like, I really enjoy how with the fifth edition Curse of Strahd handles Strahd. I liked playing that and running the character and stuff. But if you get the wrong group, I've heard some DMs that are like, players are like, as soon as they see the antagonist, they're like, let's kill him. And he's like, no, you're not supposed to fight him. And they're like, what do you mean we're not supposed to fight him? And it's like, no, like he's too powerful. And they're like, well, that's just not fair. And I'm like, well, you're establishing a personal relationship with him. That's the whole
Right.
idea for the first few encounters. And then you eventually build yourself up so that you're actually, a threat. So anyway, yeah, but I do like the way it's done. Doesn't work for every group. I think that if the perspective of the group is just like, you know, everything's a nail,
Right,
then
right.
it's really hard to pull that kind of stuff off. But and again, I appreciate both groups. I love the let's just solve this and fix the problem group, and I also like the group that's they're trying to have a cool story.
hmm I think this is we talked a little bit about player agency, and then again, this is just kind of this ongoing hot topic of people wanting it all to be about them as compared to this is a cooperative game, it's about us. And when I see the kind of play that isn't willing to go along with the story, right? That somehow losing some sort of player agency has caused some weird distress in them. That's not healthy to me.
Sure. Well, and I think a GM has to learn this though too. I think that at this time, and probably for years after this, I had this feeling that as a GM or a DM, I had to be in control of the situation. I started getting into story games though, like a few years
Mm-hmm.
after this, and I was very much like, oh yeah, play to find out what happens. So like, go ahead, give the players complete agency and see what happens. And sometimes you get to the point where you're like, yeah, this is not in a productive way. This is not a productive story, or it's not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pure power fantasy, and you're like, all right, well, we found that out. That's cool. I don't really want to run these kind of games anymore. I could either run a game that suits the group, or I can move on. But other times you're surprised. You're like, oh, okay, cool. The players took this in a direction that I didn't expect, and it doesn't suit like scripted adventures very well. So you can't really write a module, based on the idea of giving the players complete agency.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not bad to play a game or run a game, where you don't know where it's going to end up. You have no clue. It's just all kind of out there, and people get to make it up as they go along and collaborate.
Interesting, because I always feel that Arcanis tries very hard to straddle that fence.
Hmm.
That you if from the interviews of people who were behind the scenes at various points throughout the first story arc, there were multiple times where the players did things that Henry had absolutely no anticipation for, and they had to respond on the fly, and it was always really important to do a yes and.
Yeah,
or
that's great.
or in fact awesome a yes, or sometimes a yes but, and
Yeah.
I'm actually a bigger fan of the yes but,
Mm.
to be honest, because yes and this is just, I think, my DM dynamics. I want player agency, but I'm still the DM, damn it.
Yeah.
So but means, oh, I hear your idea, this is great, but this is how I need it to happen, so it incorporates into the setting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And they did that.
Yeah, and I think Henry personally was really good at that as a DM from what I remember. It's been a long time, it's been over 20 years, but I remember he
Yeah.
was often good at incorporating player choice. And it was a big thing, I think, in the late 90s too. We were inspired by games like Legend of Five Rings and 7th Sea, which really tried to incorporate like player agency and player choice. You know, sometimes they would have like card game tournaments where the outcome would affect the storyline, you know,
Mm.
or at least in theory, the idea was that
Mm-hmm.
if people played certain scenarios in their setting and then sent in like a questionnaire about how the scenario turned out, that it would affect the storyline. I don't know if it worked out in practice, you know, because like kind of the, you know, whatever was going on business wise, like got in the way of that. But that was at least the idea. And I think that inspired um, paradigm early on. I can't speak to how it affected it, you know, going forward, but at that
Of
time, that
course.
was a big concern. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the land of eternal night, the hard point, the setup of the characters past the border into Canseri, follow the cold road to the domed city of Keelman. Game masters are encouraged to add whatever encounters prolong the character stay there as long as seems entertaining. So Keelman is basically just a tomb filled with tombs.
Yeah, and I do remember the dome thing was something that Henry came up with for the cities of Naroth. He wanted to have each city that belonged to a different member of the triumvirate be like distinct and different.
Yeah.
And I think he said something about that the reason why they built domes were because of flying creatures that would attack
Yes.
them. Oh, was it
Yep.
really? Okay,
Yep.
is that part of
Yep.
the setting?
That's
Okay,
part
cool.
of the setting. Absolutely.
All right.
100%. Yep. Um, as your group approaches Keelman, you realize that a true dome doesn't cover the city. Rather, the settlement was built around the base of an especially large mesa. It was hollowed out to serve as some point of central meeting structure. The rest of Keelman radiates out from a central point. All of its streets are covered by stonework. Literally hundreds of structures are linked together by a network of stone, both bewildering and beautiful, far surpassing anything built in Millendir in the elegance of its design. You would be awed by the city's magnificence if it weren't for the faint but persistent smell of decay that wafts from the place. As you pass beneath the grand arch of the necropolis' southern entrance, you slowly gather from the near deserted streets that the size of the city dwarfs its actual population. Many of the buildings are tombs. The only source of illumination are torches arranged at random intervals, and the occasional sprayed beam of sunlight that falls from a crack in the dome above. Now, what I remember is that it was constantly under repair and re-repair,
Mm-hmm.
and um, yeah. So careful what you trade for. Oh, this is one of these. So it says a soft point, but there's a lot of these things are absolutely, this is to get a feel for the city. This encounter takes place as the players are walking the streets of Kilman. The scene, as you carefully pick your way down the darkened avenue in Kilman, you come upon a man kneeling in the road in a shaft of sunlight, appearing to be praying. Lord, I am so sorry. Please take back your gift. I am so sorry. Once he notices you, he stands suddenly and tries to wipe away tears of anguish. Greetings, strangers. Neros' blessing upon you. If the players ask him what's wrong, he looks frightened. Nothing is wrong. And just then you hear a hiss from the shadows. Nevin, come on, Nevin. The children, I miss you. Nevin shoots a crazed look. My wife. Don't worry, it's just my wife. I thought she was gone, but I prayed to Neareth, and a tattered figure partially emerged from the shadows, and you can see the woman's body looks crushed, perhaps from fallen mortar. Nevin screams at her. Why did you do to the children? They're here, Nevin. Here with me. Nevin looks at you helplessly. Please help me. What
So
do you think of
yeah.
that one?
Oh yeah, I love this encounter. Yeah, I remember it was a mixture of like the monkey's paw is what I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the name is from Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. His name's Nevin, and I don't know if you ever like read I Am Legend, but there's a vampire outside this guy's house. Like the world has turned into vampires. There's one human being, and
Mm-hmm.
the guy's main character's name is Neville, and so he shouts out "Neville, come out, Neville" constantly. So I think that I that's why I came up with Nevin. Yeah, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so much fun.
All right, now what we got? So Nerothians, we're gonna see more dead. We're gonna see Confraternity of the Just Dead. You find the temple of the Confraternity of the Just Dead outside the walls of Kilman near the eastern gate of the city. It is a short, squat building made of wood with the golden orb of Elir displayed prominently over the temple's entrance. When you arrive and request a place to stay for the night, a monk of the Confraternity ushers you into a bare cell beneath the foundation of the temple. Dinner is served at dusk in the refectory. If there's anything you need, let me know. My name is
Hmm.
Brother Herman.
I think also I
So,
go ahead.
well, you think so? Elir, you threw Elir into the setting? Is
Yeah,
this like the only way to do it, or?
I wanted to I think in this case what I think I was thinking of was that like we've seen like sort of the undead or evil gods as being an outside force that come in and kind of corrupt things, but I was trying to think of like what a society would be like that actually was dominated by a sort of malicious god that wasn't interested in necessarily wiping out his followers,
Mhm.
but just interfered with their lives, but was somewhat tolerant, because that was I think that was one of the things that I played up toward the end, is that Neroth, the Nerothian apostate, was fairly tolerant. He allowed other faiths. The problem with Nier, or Nair, I don't remember how to
Whatever.
pronounce the name. Yeah, whatever. Kind of taking over, is that he was extremely intolerant, and he was going to, lay down the law and drive out these people. So yeah, I wanted to have Alir, just sort of adapted to the society. So instead of it being like kind of like the regular faith that you would find in Milandir, or Corian, it would be like a Kinsari equivalent, of Alir's faith.
Yep. All right. Uh, Introduce what ends up becoming a little prestige class, Knights of the Red Fist, some Nearites who fly around on winged demons.
Hmm.
The Marcus Sarish. So this is how you are able to determine if this is a free demon or not.
Yeah.
Did you design that, or was that something?
I think I came up with yeah, I'm pretty sure I came up with the Marcus Sarish. I liked the idea of like I wanted to try to have a character for each one of the cities. So like I thought I had done okay with the Nerathian cities, and when we came into
Mm-hmm.
to like a Nishanpur, I liked the idea that if anybody had the mark on them, they were protected, but there were other people wandering around that couldn't afford the mark, that would be just attacked in the streets. And if you were someone who owned the mark of Sarish, you could sit by and just watch it happen. That would be the safest thing, or you could intercede, and that would put like the heroic player characters in a bit of a quandary.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did that. Again, I don't know. You could ask everybody else, and they might have a different answer. Somebody else might have been like, "No, no, I came with the Marcus Sarish," and that's fine. I don't. It was over 20 years ago, but I remember I really liked running with the idea. If it was mine or somebody else's, I don't know.
So your guide leans forward towards you and whispers, "The Marcus Sarish. It is not necessary for you to enter, but it is said not many survive for long in the city without it. You see, the wizards Sarish do not employ guards to enforce their laws. Those with the mark are protected by their demons as long as they respect the city's traditions. Those without the mark invite the attentions of rapists, thieves, and murderers." Oh, and what's the price for the mark?
I remember we had a conversation about this, or somebody did a while back. It was 30 pieces of silver.
30 pieces of silver.
Yeah.
There it is. Bum, bum, bum. And then you use some custom demons. Here's another nice piece. So let's the description of Keelman, with all of this stone, everything's interconnected, everything's intricately carved. It really kind of has this kind of Hindu when you see these really ornate carved Hindu temples, or like in Angkor Wat or
Yeah,
something
Angkor
like
Wat. Yeah.
that. But was that where you were inspired by, or?
A little bit, yeah, I think so. I think so. I think that's what I had in mind. Yeah, and the traditions that went back much, like I was imagining, like for example, the British in India coming in and realizing that this is a region where the traditions went back centuries and centuries, and they just sort of couldn't even plumb the depths of it. I was probably thinking of, like, for example, like the second Indiana Jones movie, a little
Mhm.
bit too. Yeah.
Okay. And then so now once you get to Nishanpur, this is completely different mindset. There's no human guards. This is in essence both a theocracy and a mageocracy in the city.
Hmm.
Where did you draw inspiration for that?
Probably farther west. I'm thinking like Egypt, the Middle East, or maybe like a little bit, closer to home. But so I mean there are like Pakistan is predominantly Muslim,
Right.
and it's right next door to India. So I was imagining that kind of region of the world, sort of.
Okay. Interesting.
Also want to make clear, I'm not making any comments about these faiths. This is purely a creative creation of fiction. I just drew inspiration for some of the
Right.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like I use the book. I mean,
Yeah.
look, I mean, you don't have to cover your ass with me,
Oh
and you
yeah.
better not have to cover your ass with my audience, because we are the old school gamers, and we understand that our inspiration doesn't mean that we are co-opting or denigrating or belittling. We're being inspired as creatives by the rest of the world and integrating that into our imaginations and creating a greater just gestalt for everybody to play in.
Right. Well, and this wasn't meant to be purely inspired by that location either. Like, I
Of
mean, I
course.
think my main inspiration for Nishanpur 2 was probably the RoboCop movie, the way that the police force was privatized. So I was not trying to represent any kind of Muslim city like perfectly. It was a
Sure.
mix of like Detroit
Yeah.
and a little bit of Muslim, like maybe like, Pakistani kind of culture, maybe sprinkled
Uh-huh.
on just for flavor.
Uh-huh.
So
Very cool. Detroit. All right. So I'm gonna say this is Wheels with One Wheels. That must be got to be a hard point with a name like that.
yeah, I think so. It's not labeled though, but oh yeah, because it
Yeah.
has the letter. It doesn't have a number next to the letters, so it's got to
Right.
be a hard point.
Um, Again, living box text, man. You arrive at the
Yeah,
grand library of Nishanpur at dusk. The library is a simple structure, square at the base, but very tall. Oh, aren't there ziggurats in Nishanpur?
I'm sure there are.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so there's a lot of expository writing here
Yeah,
because well, it's necessary. It really is.
I probably would not make this choice with a second go around, but yeah, yeah,
But we don't have to anymore.
yeah,
And there's
it's
other
true.
ways to do it. You're right. What so that's actually a great point. So now I think what I've learned, and I'm sure I'm gonna, make an assumption that you've done the same thing, is that, this is where you really start incorporating skills. It takes a little time if you're pre-writing, if you're writing for adventurers, but if you're, doing your own thing on your own, you can just sit there and come up with DC levels and let people investigate. And I've talked to people, and this is what I do. My current player character is um, a a more investigative, try to understand what's happening and get to the root cause, as compared to go in and kick butt. This is where you can put in your expositor, right? You want both the DM to have the opportunity to tell you about this new and unusual place, and you want to make it so that it engages the players as well.
Hmm. Absolutely.
I think that's, become the balance in Arcanis. They've overcome that part. Oh, look at here, the Pain Garden. Oh,
Yeah.
not only the Pain Garden, but you made it a hard point.
Yeah, why the heck is it should be the hard point, actually. It's got an H1, right? That should be a soft point. That must be a misprint.
H1 hard. See, I'm wondering if this
Yeah, I think there's
was
a
supposed
misprint.
to be here.
Yeah, and H call of contracts, that should be the hard point. Yeah, the Pain Garden should be a soft point. Yeah, that's probably a misprint. Or it would have been my mistake, actually. Maybe I put down hard for some reason when I was writing this. I don't know.
Well, all it did was ensure that everybody got to experience.
Oh God, I wish they
You
hadn't.
emerge from the mirror of Ristas and find yourselves in a wide chamber filled with hanging chains. Depending
Yeah,
from
yeah.
many of the chains, some of the manacled, others held by rings actually embedded in their flesh, are a dozen human beings. Each one has a different expression. Some weep from the pain, others grit their teeth and bear it, others moan. The smell of sweat and blood assails you. The woman nearest to you twists to get a better look at you, grunting with the exertion. She's hanging upside down by chains manacled about her neck, ankles, and right arm. She drags herself partway horizontal, blinks rapidly as blood rushes to starve parts of her anatomy, then grins. Welcome. You're part of the entourage? Good. Right on time. They're about to leave. Please tell Master Vihan something for me. When you see him, tell him I can feel it now. Thank you. He'll understand. The woman's hand slips and she passes out.
I think writing this, I was like, what'd be really cool right here is some Hellraiser. Let's put some Hellraiser just in the middle of it, people being tortured for
uh-huh.
no reason. Yeah.
Well, you said that you had been inspired by Cronenberg and the
Yeah, yeah.
body. Yeah, so, it's
Yeah.
going to happen. And how would you do that differently today?
I wouldn't do that scene. Or I wouldn't do the scene because I don't feel it advances the plot at all. I mean, maybe it'll establish the setting a little bit, but it doesn't establish something I think interesting about the setting. I think that was just meant to shock people. I guess the idea was that I was trying to say something about the priesthood of Sarish, that they were I don't know
They
what I was
were a
trying to say about them.
BDSM cult.
Yeah, sure, that they're deviants or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like the scene at all now. I don't know why it's there. And I honestly, I'm embarrassed that I wrote it. So, but sorry, guys. You might want another answer, but that's what I'm gonna go with.
All right. That's cool. Hey, man, we all look back sometimes and went, what the fuck was I thinking?
Right.
Oh, here's the Menagerie of the Forsworn.
I might have saw this as a descent into hell as well. Maybe I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's Dante. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, yes, I mean, if you look at, refectory of the senses, workshops, archives, menagerie, reservoir. Oh, this is, oh, you pass through the arch and find yourself on a balcony looking out over a huge cavern. Below you, you see what looks like a huge underground lake. Its waters thick and sluggish, almost black in color. Like some unknown means, most likely magical, the waters are kept constantly churning and frothing. A cloying, sickly smell rises from the surface. Far above you, you can see tiny openings that let the feeble rays of the moon, and you realize that these openings are the many wells you spotted throughout the city of Nishanpur earlier. What is the reservoir of Nishanpur's heart?
So this one, and again, you probably would want to talk to Henry about this, but I'm gonna pin this one on Henry. I'm pretty sure Henry came up with the idea of like there should be wells in Nishanpur where people like kind of like cut their hands and donate blood into it, and the blood
Mm-hmm.
like collects into a giant reservoir at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Yeah, I it it's You know what? It's hard for me to say because a lot of stuff for me is not over the top. It seems a little over the top for me. I was trying to find a way to like kind of integrate it in here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to Will. We were talking about like gaming with Henry,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully he won't be upset by this. But yeah, like at one point,
Oh,
like Will was talking about like yeah, like at one point we ended up in this chamber and it was just like a giant mountain of skulls, and I'm like, why was there mountain of skulls there? And he's like, because it's Henry, man. There's always like a mountain of skulls somewhere, you know. So yeah,
so there's
I don't
always a
know.
pool, a lake, or a mountain of skulls.
Right, 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 or
A
something.
pool of
So
blood, a lake of blood.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, image wise, like I don't know if it does it for people. I was like kind of like, ooh, okay. Like what I ended up coming up with, I'm like, well, why is there a giant lake of blood? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I had to find a practical reason for it. And so I think that the idea was that I think there's the blood avatar creature that shows up at the end. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that's what's happening. Is they're collecting enough, blood for a blood elemental.
Yeah.
But it wasn't originally like my plan. I just incorporated it in because it seemed like Henry suggested it. And it was like, okay, yeah, it seems like a cool thing to do. Sure. Giant
Yeah.
pool of blood.
Oh, I love incorporating, okay, you want this thing into the adventure. Now, how do I make it actually work?
Oh yeah.
How
Oh,
do I make it
absolutely.
really fit? And
Oh,
that, again, that's part of, I think that if people are, as the environment is changing, when you and I were first doing this 20 some years ago, dreaming of breaking into the gaming industry, it was truly a pipe dream.
yeah.
It was so hard.
Yeah.
It's so much easier today to break in. I mean, I'm seeing guys on YouTube doing little videos who are also professional DMs running, 5 to 6 games a week.
Yep.
So the ideas behind how to do this professionally is becoming more and more important, because that's where, middle-aged dudes like you and me are now going to be able to hopefully sit back and make a few bucks from our decades of nerddom.
Yeah, well, middle-aged dudes like you and me, with disposable incomes want to pay for stuff like this. So
Yeah.
it allows. Yeah, I have a friend that he runs games professionally, and he tells me some crazy stories. Like he has groups of players that are like, "Hey, we're gonna fly you out to California so you can run games for us personally." Which is to me, it just boggles my mind. And they're like, "Yeah, I went out there and they took me to what is it, medieval times, and
Mm,
treated me to dinner." And
mm-hmm,
all expenses paid. And I'm like,
mm-hmm.
awesome, man. Like that's something that that wouldn't, yeah, that's no way that could have happened back when we were, starting out. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, because when it became so, I mean, in the '80s when I started, it was just, no way. We just, our big dream was to write an adventure and have it accepted at Gen Con. That
Mm,
was, we thought, was going to be the pinnacle of being a gamer. But third edition and the OGL, it changed all that. That made everybody think they could do it. And of course, it's like the restaurant business. Everybody thinks they can run a restaurant because, they go out to eat all the time and they cook at home.
hmm.
But
Sure.
that's not how it works. Doing something for a business, to do it professionally, is very different than being a home cook or
Oh
even
yeah.
being really good at hosting a party at home.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's what
Definitely.
gets people. They think, oh, I can host these big parties. I can become an event planner. Mm,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah. No, I have friends that do this professionally, and
Mm-hmm.
I prefer being an amateur. I like
Mm-hmm.
writing something once in a while. If it gets published,
Mm-hmm.
great. Other than that, I'll go about my business. It's grueling, trying to work as like a freelance or just even just like do this, write this stuff on a regular basis. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to keep it up. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a couple. As I think about it, there's that I think about how can I make this happen.
Mm,
When people ask me, so I'm a chef by profession, and people will ask me, well, there's a couple things people ask me that you hate. First is, well, what do you cook? What kind of chef are you? Well, what kind of chef am I? I'm a chef with integrity. That's the kind of chef I am. I'm a flavor chef, not a fancy chef. That's usually my real answer.
mm,
Um, but what I tell people that what they don't understand is that a cook knows how, a chef knows why,
mm,
and a great chef is a problem solver.
mm.
And I want to take this mindset into game. and that to bring with it both that aspect of what does it mean to be a professional and to be a professional who's great, and pull in my hospitality background and make these experiences focused on hospitality. And I think running bespoke games for people who can afford it is going to be how I'm going to supplement my income.
No, it's possible. I'll tell all your listeners, yeah, it's very possible. Like I said, I have a friend that does it, and he's doing okay. You know, I mean, he's not living, great life. You know, really, he's not Matt Mercer lifestyle,
He's
but
not living the life, right? The
yeah, but
party
he's doing
lifestyle.
okay. You know,
Look,
he's doing all
man,
right.
this is what I've told people. I don't need to make all the money. I just need to make enough. I need to make my fair part. That's all. I don't need to be the one that is the top dog in the industry. I don't need to be the top paid person in my company. I just need the company to be successful and have a regular income coming in so that I can live my life and be able to plan.
Yeah, feel appreciated, not be exploited. Yeah, I got you.
All right. So,
I
this is
remember
all
nothing about this, by the way.
what you're
I'm looking at the names of the pictures, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what this
yeah,
is.
I don't know what this. So this is, kind of coming up. This is the party emerges from the glass of the mirror and travels down a short passage. It opens up upon a huge auditorium. The basin of the auditorium is sandy but stained red. So what's going on here? This is where the council and Nihang are fighting over who will be the next head muckety muck.
Yeah.
Dark apostate.
I love running stuff with political intrigue. It's
Yeah.
not always the most exciting stuff, but I like running stuff like that. Often, like my players are just like, okay, so who was this person again? Like you've given me like a
Yeah.
dozen names. Who was this person? I can't even keep them straight.
Nope. I know that feeling because
Yeah,
I have been on both ends.
yeah,
Because that's how I like to run. Because right here, 1, 2, 3, honor guard. Here's a named person. Here's a named person. Right.
yeah, yeah.
More named people. Manette. Oh, look at this. Oh, wow. So here's something really important.
Hmm.
The menagerie of the Forsworn. A huge reinforced door bolted from the outside leads into the room. The walls within are marked with mystical symbols and concentric rings of summoning. There is a heavy smell of ozone in the air. Upon the low dais are arranged the tiny bone-carved figurines, many of which wear long, pale robes and look like figures from ancient history. In the center of the smaller figures, against the far wall, is a statue of a majestic being, hewn entirely from the bones of some great beast. The magnificent being's face is fixed in a rictus of frustrated rage, huge six-fingered hands spread wide in appeal. As you approach, the statue quivers and utters a single word in a gravelly basso. Uh, the statue of the fallen Valinor of Alir, known as Menetis. Tharish tempted him away from Alir's service by appealing to his pride and encouraged Menetis to build his own cult followers during the First Imperium. But when Menetis became a threat to the demon god himself, Tharish quickly made arrangements to have the Valinor imprisoned. All that Menetis requires to be free is for his lips to taste human blood once again. If the players are fool enough to free him, read the following. As your blood touches his lips, the surface of the statue shivers and takes a more fleshy consistency. The Valinor radiates with an inner light and looks down on you, all booming. Your Lord Menetis thanks you. You have done well, my followers, and will be rewarded. I go now to prepare our return. There is a crackling sound and it vanishes in a blinding flash of light. Do you ever have anybody do that?
Skin blood.
Yeah.
No, you know what? I've run this maybe twice. I don't
Okay.
think that people even got to this point. I think that it kind of collapsed in the middle. Like as soon as they entered like the Nerathian area, they were like either like we're abandoning this quest because we don't want to do this anymore, or they ended up like
Oh,
dying horribly.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but again, I wrote a
I
bunch
had
of
a
stuff where
party
I
who
was
do
like,
this.
why would oh really? Oh
Oh
wow.
yeah. Oh yeah, man. Because all right, so this is why. So So first off, it's Arcanis, and they're getting the feeling that there's a twist to everything. And so they talk themselves into this kind of George Costanza mindset. If everything I do is wrong, if I just do the opposite, the good results will come out. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
That sounds like me as a player character, actually. I tend to talk myself into terrible stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
But and they thought it was okay because he just said, thank you and left. Like they didn't get destroyed for it. So they were like patting themselves on the back, not knowing what had happened. All right. So what other? Let's see. So we go. So yeah, we got all these named people. The fall of Nishanpur. The setup. This encounter takes place once the characters have followed the passages. So after wandering within for hours, your group emerges from a cleft of rock on a hill that looks down upon the city. Oh, this is like a little denouement here.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks like the fighting between the Canceri priests has spread to the streets. Buildings lay wasted and fires rage out of control. Here and there you spot horned demons causing havoc, or a pack of ghouls falling upon the helpless. There are also many large squads of men and women in red leather armor rushing from place to place. So those are the three power bases. From the edge of the city, you suddenly realize that one of the many bonfires in Nishanpur is moving purposefully. A massive pillar of flame is heading up one of the main streets towards the Council of the Nihang. With the flames, you see the blackened figure of a man. Anything that crosses his path is consumed. The Sword of Heavens. From behind you, Losnick chuckled. You've done very well. The Sword of Heavens has cut deep into Canceri, and soon it will fall upon all the nations of man. Let's see how they deal with that. But we had a bargain, did we not? I've come to collect. All right. So, this some insight here might be worth it if you can. Loskneck takes the book from you and, smiling broadly, turns to a particular page. Amos, it is just as I always thought. You, always the sly one. Both the master and I miss you dearly. With that, he rips a page out of the book and puts it in his doublet. Then he remarks to you casually, have you noticed that whenever this book goes, empires crumble, cities fall, and thousands die in agony? Then he drops the book at your feet and walks away. Players are free to pick up the book or not. If they decide to leave the book, from the shadows you hear Loskneck's voice. I'm impressed. Could it be that you mortals have learned wisdom? There is no gift without a price, and the ones that come easiest are sometimes the hardest to pay. I will be watching you, all of you. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I don't remember if whether I came up with that or if that was a Henry thing. I really don't recall at this point. And I'm not sure what I had planned. I know that's a very unsatisfying answer.
That's all right.
But but yeah, I mean I do like the idea of him kind of giving them the choice of picking up the book because at least from what I remember of like the D&D groups I played with, back in the 80s and 90s, that would be irresistible. And they'd be like, "Oh no, I gotta have the book," like snatch that up. So yeah, fun, fun.
Yep.
So many NPCs though. I'm looking at the
I
NPC
know.
motives.
I know. Motive. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Wow. Oof.
Yeah. So what do you feel? I mean, so looking back, what what is a good number? So first off, I think there's been a lot of discussion about how long an adventure should be. I think that convention 4-hour slots set the standard for what I believe should be a 3-hour adventure.
Hmm.
What do you think? And do you think this could actually be done in 3 hours?
Well, That's hard for me to say because a lot of the encounters that I'm looking at, they seem like empty calories a little bit. Like that pain garden
Mm-hmm.
thing, that's
Mm-hmm.
no more than 5 minutes. Like you walk
Mm-hmm.
in, and a lot of it's just exposition. Like I'm going to read you this box text. Do you have anything you want to do in reaction? No? We'll go to the next encounter. So it could be breezed through. And then there are other parts that really like you could get a lot of time. Like just that small part with the guy that's the demon that's trapped and whether or not to put blood on his lips.
Mm-hmm.
There are groups that will sit around and agonize over that for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And I think that's why that stuff is there,
Yeah.
to be honest. And that's why I think these were not convention mods. These are designed for home,
Hmm.
right? I don't think the intention was ever to
No.
run this at Origins or Gen Con.
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah. And then, so given that consideration, and what I see is kind of the 3 act play model that finally took over adventure writing. So I actually had adventures rejected when I would send them to a couple, to more than just one person.
Hmm.
In the late 90s and early 2000s, because I would write my adventures in the style of a 3 act play to just give the whole layout, and I would get rejected because it wasn't in an official RPGA format. And
Right.
I'm like, wait, no, no, no. Tell me if the adventure's good, and then I'll worry about your format.
Yeah. Well, and I think things have changed a lot over time. Like I was looking at the guidelines that Wizards of the Coast put out for like fifth edition modules, and the specify like there's location based scenarios and there's event based scenarios, and the location based scenarios are very much like you would see in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, which were just like here's a map, there's numbers
Mm-hmm.
assigned to each room, and as the players wander through they encounter these things. It wasn't really, there was no story so much. It was just they would just wander through space. But you started seeing more event based or like 3 act kind of stories coming out, and now they sort of there's room for both. So I think that things have definitely changed over the years.
The reason
There's a
I liked
transition.
the 3 act format when I was using it is that I felt it would help the players fall into the role of a character in a story, to give them a little nudge that they're in a play.
Yeah.
You're in a morality play. You're in, an exploratory, uh, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We're taking an
Right.
opportunity to learn about each other in a free form, unstructured way. Give into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're getting a little bit of information, but eventually you'll put all the pieces together right around when the climax happens, and then
Right.
there'll be the height of action, and but also everything will become clear, and then you have a crisis, and there's hopefully there's some sort of choice involved in the conflict as well, some sort of dramatic choice, and not just a overcome the thing with die rolls, and then you
Mm-hmm.
move on to the resolution.
Right. And and this is where you think about both, because I played in a game to try it out, to whatever, slot zero it, to prepare it for the convention. And afterwards, because everybody who was playing was going to run the game as a DM, or most of them were. And so we did a little feedback, a little constructive, how would we do this, what would we change. And it was funny because at one point, I was like, well, there's 3 opportunities to do deep investigation, and I felt like for a 3-hour event, plus the normal opportunities for combat that may or may not happen. If they happen, you may not have the time to do all 3. And I suggested, well, why does this one exist? And
Hmm.
they were like, oh, because that's the one where you're actually going to learn the truth. And I was like, what?
Hmm.
And then it was, a little explanation. So, what I find that I need to start doing is um, thinking about both pacing and how to get all the information in the time allotted.
Yeah.
So do you still do convention gaming?
No, I haven't for a long time. I used to, up until probably about 10 years ago. And then I found that I had enough people that I've connected with, that I could just, I could get together and play with them. I used to like, meeting strangers and, running games for them, but I don't know, not so much now. I don't know. Yeah,
I
that's not a
think
really good
the
answer.
hospitality, sommelier, fancy restaurant captain in me that loves to stand in front of the table and direct people to having a good time. And I don't mind doing that with strangers over and over and over again.
That's good. That's good. I
Yeah.
I used to really enjoy it. I don't know. Yeah, it's changed a little bit, So
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I haven't been to a
for
major
me.
convention in 15 years, so we're going to see what happens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm thrilled. Let me know how it goes.
Absolutely.
And
I'm going to do some filming there. I've got people who I'm going to talk to.
yeah,
So
cool.
let's wind down here. This is probably what I talk about next, of course. And here is your chapter on Camp Theory and all of the other nations. And just to give a little preview for me, I'm telling you though, I mean, I bought the initial two adventures basically to support you and
Oh,
of
thank
course PCI, but
you. Mhm.
this cover is what hooked me into the campaign.
Oh yeah, because it's our first original cover too, and it incorporates a lot of the stuff that we had been establishing with the setting. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, very neat.
yep. All right, my
Yeah,
friend. Well, thanks again for your time.
sure, absolutely.
Awesome walk through memory lane and talking about our beloved gaming hobby.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, enjoy your weekend. For those of you, we'll place ourselves in time. This is the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend 2024, but this is evergreen information. You can follow and listen anytime you like. All right, so to all past, present, and future Arcaniacs, thanks for your time. I look forward to seeing and talking to you all at your earliest convenience. Take care.